Allan! 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 Al! Allan! Allan! Allan!
You there, Allan?
You're ringing my mobile too here, are you?
How are you, mate?
Great, mate. How are you?
I'm really good. Allan Pease joins us this afternoon. He's a fun man. He's got a great sense of humour. And are we ringing your mobile? Are we? You know, the quality's all right here. Quality's
yeah,
okay.
well, it sounds like we've got a storm coming up here in Queensland, so it might be putting a bit of crackle over there.
It is a bit of crackle. Will we persist or will we call back, Mike? We'll persist. We're going to persist, Allan.
Okay, all right,
mate. Today we're talking about, from your book, The Answer, we're going to talk about visualisation. Last week we talked about other things of setting goals. But today we're going to talk about the power, if you like, of visualisation. Now, once you've set yourself the goals, you just can't basically, well, I've done that. I'll achieve all this now. You've got to actually think about it and you've got to visualise it. But it's not just your goals. I mean, visualisation is a powerful tool that you can use. I know in your book you refer to stories about sports people and things like that, particularly golfers. I think it's a quote from Jack Nicklaus, isn't there, in there about, you know, he always visualised where he's going to hit the ball and how he's going to hit the ball. My question to you is, what is visualisation?
Well, visualisation means that you, in your mind, imagine a clear picture of what it is you want to do or achieve. So you see yourself doing it, getting it, having it, becoming it, and the clearer you see it, the more likely that is to happen. Because the thing about the brain that's interesting is that it doesn't know the difference between reality or fantasy. So, for example, right now, you don't really know whether you and I are talking on this phone or not, or whether you're just dreaming it. You actually don't know. You think you're talking, but you might be somewhere in a loony bin banging your head against the wall saying, oh, I'm having a great time. You don't know. So it gets your body to respond as though it was true. And a typical example is when somebody's dreaming. They might be dreaming that they're running or swimming or playing tennis, and suddenly in bed you start hitting tennis shots or you start jogging in bed, and sleepwalkers get up and run. Because the brain doesn't know the difference between whether it's a real experience or whether it's imagined. And this is the whole secret. But you make a point with visualisation of clearly imagining what you do want to happen, what you do want to achieve. And if you can clearly see it, just like when you're asleep, the brain makes the body move forward to actually achieve it, whether it's good or bad. But most people, you know what they do? They think about what they don't want, not what they do want.
What they don't want, not what they do want. Tell me about the mind. You say here the mind thinks in pictures.
Well, that's right. It doesn't think in words. It thinks in actual pictures and images. And so most people, what the image they have in their mind are things, as I said, that they don't want. So now I don't want my partner to leave. I don't want to get divorced. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to go broke and have no money. I don't want to be old and grey and on a pension and with no one looking after me. So they picture what they don't want. Now, the brain doesn't know the difference between whether that image is a real one or a fake one, and it draws to your attention. It draws you into circumstances, and we talked about this last week about the RAS, the part of the brain that seeks information. It seeks information about giving you what you don't want. So if you're thinking about, like, you don't want to lose all your friends, your brain says lose all your friends, and so it starts creating behaviours where you start to lose all your friends. So what you need to do is think about the fact that you do want friends, that you do want to become financially successful, you do want to have a partner who loves you and wants to stay with you, you do want to have a house on the beach or whatever it is. And whatever it is you picture, that part of the brain in the back there we call the RAS, or reticular activating system, searches for circumstances that create that effect.
Tell the story to support this about Jim Carrey.
Yeah, Jim Carrey one's a very interesting one. I mean, long before anybody ever heard of the guy, he wrote a cheque to himself for $10 million. Paid to Jim Carrey for $10 million for services rendered because he decided to become a famous actor. This is when he was in acting school. Nobody even heard of the guy. He was just some kid. But he wrote a cheque and he carried that around with him for nearly 7 years in his wallet, and he would look at it all the time. And when you've got something physical like that, you can visualise yourself being presented with the cheque. And his average movie now is around $20 to $30 million he gets paid.
Tell me about visualisation in reference to medical sides of things. You've got an example that you give in your book here.
Well, probably one of the most striking ones, and that was research carried out here in Australia, in Sydney, by Allan Richardson. And he did a test with basketball players. There have been tests like this done back in the 70s and the 80s that got pretty much the same result. You got 3 groups of basketball players, all had roughly equal skill. And he said for 20 days for the first group, you're not to practice anything at all. Just go away for 20 days and come back and shoot some hoops at the end. The second group, he said, shoot hoops on the first day and on the 20th day, but in between, I want you just to spend 20 minutes a day practicing in your mind, sitting back in the seat with your eyes closed, practicing shooting the hoops. and getting it right. And the third group, he got them to practice 20 minutes a day for 20 days. So one group actually practiced every day, one group didn't practice at all, and the third group practiced on the first and last day, but in between they visualised themselves getting the hoops and just practiced in their mind playing the results. Now the ones who actually practiced every day, did the hard physical training, had around 24% improvement. The ones who practiced in their mind had a 23% improvement, and they hadn't actually done anything. And this is pretty devastating stuff when you think about it. I mean, if you can accomplish it mentally, physically it can be accomplished as well. Does that mean that you shouldn't bother practicing and you should just think about it? No, it doesn't mean that. If you do both, if you physically go out and do it and visualise it, it's going to happen.
On my TV screen in the studio at the moment, I've got an interview with Tiger Woods. All right, and it's timely that we talk about that because Tiger Woods, I know, he often visualises when he plays golf. What do you think is the problem with him at the moment, or do you think that he's, as a result of the most recent competition for him where he did really well, do you think he's on his way back?
Well, look, that's a good example you've got there too, because I mean, Tiger Woods was the greatest thing that ever lived up until he had that problem with his marriage and it all went backwards. But up until that point, he only ever imagined himself as the greatest player who ever lived. He saw himself in his mind, he does this like many sports people do, before he hits a shot, he visualises where the ball's going to go and he sees it going in the hole. That instructs his body to create the swing that gets that effect. And for most of his career, up until the marriage situation, he visualised himself as the greatest. And suddenly overnight he fell out of glory because he had a girlfriend and his wife booted him out and the whole disaster went down and people who were supporting him financially pulled away. And what the guy was doing, and I'm surprised that nobody picked him up on this, he was visualising what he didn't want. He was visualising himself as missing the holes and being no good and living up to what people were saying about him. Now, the guy that's cheating, he's a fink, and he's really not what he's cracked up to be. He's not the wholesome guy, which is, the Americans love to really put that on people. And he was visualising that he was no good at anything, and as a result, that's what was happening. He couldn't hit the holes, he couldn't get himself back on track again, he couldn't save his marriage, and he couldn't get himself a girlfriend. What he seems to be doing now is going back to what he knew before. He's starting to visualise himself again, hitting goals and hitting the holes and getting them right. And as long as he sticks with that and refuses to acknowledge doing it wrong, he'll make a comeback.
I didn't realise you trained in the 70s as a hypnotherapist.
Yeah, most people didn't know that. I did back in the mid-70s, and I didn't do the course so much as to stop people smoking or giving up bad habits, which I did do that in the first couple of years of training, but I did it mostly so that I could put it into part of my goal setting, because what hypnosis is very simple. In hypnosis, as most people don't know this unless you've been hypnotised, you're not actually asleep. You're in a state of what's called alpha, where we've reduced your brainwave output from 13 to 16 cycles a second down to about 8 to 12 cycles a second. And 8 to 12 cycles a second, that allows somebody to put visualisation images into your brain that your brain will accept, whereas in a waking state, your brain will fight with it and argue with it because it might conflict with what you already think. So we remove the ability to consciously think about stuff and put it in. That's all hypnosis is a hypnotist, as a therapist, putting in clear images of what you will have, will become, and will do. And that was where I started off, understanding how you could turn the chief executive of a company into Elvis Presley and get him to sing in tune in front of the whole company or jump around on the floor like a frog. Provided they accept the images, the body carries out the action. That's all hypnosis is the ability to think clearly under the right conditions about what you do want and stop thinking about what you don't want.
So we've talked a lot about visualisation. How do people put it into practice?
Well, the first thing is what you just said. You've got to make a decision that you will do this. And the way to do it's very simple. You just sit down in a chair somewhere, and once you get the hang of this, you can do it almost anywhere, sitting in the car or on a bus is a great spot. You sit down and you just close your eyes over lightly, and you just breathe in and out slowly and let yourself become relaxed. Now, when you're in a waking state, it's what's called the beta state. So if we plug you into a biofeedback machine, we'll see your brainwaves are between 13 and 18 cycles a second. That's the amount of energy we're putting out in a waking state. But when you close your eyes and relax, it drops down to 8 to 12 cycles a second. Now, at 8 to 12 cycles a second, your brain will accept images. So now you put yourself into that state just by relaxing yourself. Then you think about and visualise yourself doing the thing you want to do. So if you're scared of something like public speaking, or you've got to have a pretty nasty meeting with someone, or you're going for a job interview where you might be scared, you visualise yourself walking to the job interview, doing it right, saying the right thing, shaking hands the right way, coming across really well. Because you know what most people do when they go to a job interview? They see themselves screwing it up, making the wrong words, stuttering, forgetting their stuff. And as a result, because the brain doesn't know the difference, that's what happens. So you visualise yourself doing it all right, only takes 3 or 4 minutes to do that, then open your eyes and just go in and you watch what happens. Your body will carry out what your brain saw.
Is there a particular time of day when it's best to do visualisation? I'm thinking of a night time as you're dropping off to sleep. Is that a good time to do it?
Well, night time is you can do it any time, but you can grab 5 minutes. Once you become good at it, you can do it pretty much anywhere. So if you've got to travel by public transport, a bus, train or a plane, that's perfect because it burns time up really quickly visualising. So a 1 hour train flight, a train or flight or a bus trip will only feel like about 6 or 8 minutes when you're in visualisation. But the ideal place is when you, as you said, when you're about to go to sleep, when you lay back and you're just resting, but you're not asleep, but you've dropped your brain waves down somewhere between 4 cycles a second, what we call the theta wave, and 12 cycles. When you just before you sleep, just start visualising what it is you want to do tomorrow. So, for example, if you wanted to wake up at 7 o'clock tomorrow, or let's say 6 o'clock, and you've never done it, just visualise yourself with the alarm clock going off at 6 o'clock. You see yourself getting up and see yourself feeling really good and feeling great. Because most people say, oh, when I wake up in the morning, I feel like crap and I feel terrible. They put that image in. Then they wake up feeling like crap. Say, I told you so.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it?
That's the good. Whatever you think, good or bad, is what you're going to get. So the simple way of doing this. Now, it's not easy, Brent. I'll tell you, it's not easy, but it is simple. Only visualise what you do want and refuse to acknowledge thinking about what you don't want, because most people think about what they don't want, because whichever way you think of it, you're going to get that.
I'm visualising I've got to go to the news and let you go. I'm visualising I'm going to say thank you so much for all the time that you give us. We really appreciate it. The book is called The Answer. And what's the best website for people to go to get a copy of The Answer?
Just go to Pease, that's my name, Pease.tv, television, and you'll see it all there.
Okay, Pease, Pease.tv, and you'll see it all there. Allan, thank you so much, mate. Are you enjoying Queensland?
Well, normally it's sunny Queensland. We've got a tropical cyclone at the moment, but it's still hot, so the rain's hot.
All right, mate. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you again next week.
Okay, mate.
Thanks,
All
Allan.
good.
See you, mate. Bye-bye. Allan Pease. He's got the book called The Answer.